Alright, let's come back to our lecture. Continue with step number 5, data analysis. Finally, after four different steps, it's time for us to do this the most exciting part, really data analysis. And for us, we just look at some very simple descriptive analysis of stats. And just for your information, we have two types of analysis in terms of the statistical. Number first is called descriptive, which is usually we do frequency table, do cross tabulations, figure out those mean, mode, median, and other stuff like skewness, kurtosis, that kind of thing. And the second type of statistical analysis, really, we talk about inferential statistical analysis, typically used to test a hypothesis. So this part I'm not gonna cover in this class, and we're going to talk about something very simple like one-way frequency table, and also the next second part is cross tabulation tables. Okay, now one-way frequency tables. If you look at the questions, let's say question 35. Why would you not consider going to St. Paul or for hospitalization? Now remember, this is actually we have this question here talk about the consumers' preferences for uh, St. Paul or uh, Minneapolis. It's a twin city in Minnesota. So this is a part of the big survey, obviously. And you can see from the chart is like we have 300 respondents responded to this particular survey questionnaire, and then this questions we have just some people answered differently. Like say, for example, some people indicate that they don't want to go to St. Paul for hospitalization because they're not good service or services poor, and then other people talk about it's too small and still bad publicity. So we kind of get a sense of among those who uh, answer this question, we get to the percentages, and then so we get a sense that they're not good services. For example, those totally asked out of people who asked this question, 64, we have 56 indicated that they're not good service or good or service poor. And then you can look at this is pretty straightforward kind of one-way friction table. And if you remember on the previous video we taught we run this data cleaning. Let's go back a little bit to take a look at we actually run this a little bit. Let me go back to this. This is it's very similar. It's like did you attend at least one movie at the movie theater in the past? This is an example of a frequency table as well. Like a one-way frequency table. So just so that you guys see, actually, you can pretty much easily get this done in SPSS software. So let's go on. Okay. Second part of the cross tabulation is called a cross. Second part of the descriptive analysis. Usually, I mean, we do a lot actually called cross tabulations. This is where the data analytics people or data analytic company frequently talk about. And just nowadays everybody talk about analytics as if it's a magical something totally. It's like, oh, anytime you talk about analytics, it's like in fact it's like such an excitement, and people, if you put the analytics on your resume, and then you probably get much more kind of much more responses from your employers, because people really want to know how to understand analytics, how to understand so much data we have been able to gather. And then the big companies, they used to have like talk up like they used to talk about themselves as like CRM, customer relationship management company. now they kind of rebrand themselves as a big data company. Now I have to tell you that I was in the field for in the industry for some time, for like, and then I know that they always have this buzzword to like it's like bandwagon effect. People rename themselves the different kinds of like the companies, like for example, one of the company called Experian, which is one of the three big consumer credit companies. I mean, they gather tons of information. Experian actually they have big office in Irvine, and some of them might want to check it out. They used to call themselves CRM company, and now they can, well, we are become big data company as well. So they do tons of analytics for their clients, and most analytic stuff that basically is what we call a slice and dice data. I mean, the particular behavior looked through different lenses, a different perspective. Look through length of age, look at the length of gender, look at the length of ethnicity, and most frequently look at the length of the income. Like annual household income is very important to marketers because they want to find out what kind of income demographic, what kind of like they are targeting. I mean, this is very important to marketers. Whether you're selling cheap products or you're selling luxury products, very very important stuff to think about. Now, let's look at this example or sample cross tabulation. Let's read the question real carefully, and then I want you to look at this slide really, really intensely so that you can kind of see what's going on here. It's a very good example of doing cross tabulation. Question number 30. If you or a member of your family were to require hospitalization in the future and the procedure could be performed in Minneapolis or St. Paul, where would you choose to go? Now, obviously, we have two choices, actually. Oh, actually, three choices. One is called I don't know category or no response category. So we have three. One say to a hospital in St. Paul, the other to a hospital in Minneapolis, and then third, obviously, we have some people they have no idea or they skip the responses. So we have this three different responses, and then we cross tabulate by age. In other words, if you just look at the total number of 300 respondents, and then among 300 respondents, 144 or 48% say to a hospital in St. Paul, or 146, 48.7% of respondents say to a hospital in Minneapolis. And then you have 10 respondents, or 3.3%, say they don't know, or have no response. So just based upon this first column, called 300, out of 300, 144, 146, 48.0, 48.7, they are pretty much equal. In other words, if you just look at this number, and the result will be something like, oh, I don't think that people have any preferences, just a random process almost. But that's not the whole picture. I mean, we know that people go to different hospital based upon their demographics, based upon their own situation. So now let's add this variable called age. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different age groups. Usually that's how we kind of just look at things. Age group. I mean, you can do it differently, like 18, 34, 35, 44, 45, 54, 55, 64, 65, or 74, whatever the categories you choose to use, it's up to you. And so we look at the age group, and then now you can see it's becoming interesting. I mean, this is something we call insight. Insight. Remember, we talk about insight a lot in our class, and whatever we're trying to do, we're trying to do here research. Spend tons of time, lots of money to find out what. This is the moment of truth. This is the moment of insight, and we use insights to inspire our campaigns or inspire our decision making. And in this time, we try to figure out if your one of the hospital, you want to find out what's going on, you know. So let's look at the age group, 1834. 1834. Let's look at, okay, 21 people out of 65 said to a hospital in Nepal.